The phone jolted me awake at midnight. My heart hammered as I grabbed it, half expecting an emergency. But the voice on the other end was smooth, almost like a lullaby. "Hey, it's me. Just wanted to tuck you in with a good night's kiss over the phone," Elvis said, his voice dripping with charm. My mind spun. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, was calling to wish me good night. I couldn't believe it. My throat tightened and I managed a shaky, "Hi, Elvis, good night, I guess." He laughed, a warm, deep sound that made me melt a little. "Sweet dreams, Yvonne. See you tomorrow." I hung up, still feeling the echo of his words. My room was silent, but my heart was anything but. I tossed and turned, my mind racing with thoughts of him. How did I, a regular girl from Glendale, end up in this crazy, glamorous world? The next morning, I rushed to get ready, eager to see him again. But as I stepped out of my house, I realized something was different. The street was swarming with people, cameras flashing, voices calling out his name. I felt a wave of panic. How was I supposed to get to him through this crowd? I pushed through the throng, my heart pounding. When I finally reached the car, the driver looked at me with a mix of sympathy and amusement. "Tough morning, huh?" he asked. I nodded, trying to catch my breath. "Yeah, I just didn't expect this." He smiled. "Welcome to the world of Elvis Presley." The ride to the studio was a blur. I kept thinking about the night before, his sweet words, and how surreal it all felt. When we arrived, the chaos only grew. Fans were everywhere, their faces lit up with excitement and love for Elvis. It was overwhelming, but I couldn't help smiling. Despite everything, it was exciting to be a part of this. Elvis was waiting for me by the studio gates, his eyes scanning the crowd until they found mine. He smiled, and it was like the world faded away for a moment. "Hey, you made it," he said, pulling me into a hug. I felt a surge of warmth. "Of course I did, you told me to." We walked through the studio, hand in hand, the cameras clicking and the fans cheering. It was like a dream, but it was real. We spent the day together, talking, laughing, and trying to act normal in a world that was anything but. As the day went on, I realized how much I was learning about him. He wasn't just the rock star everyone saw on stage. He was a kind, funny, and incredibly genuine person. We talked about everything from our childhoods to our dreams. He shared stories about his family in Memphis, and I told him about my life in Glendale. It felt like we were two regular people, just getting to know each other. But the reality of his fame was always there, lurking in the background. People were always watching, always waiting to catch a glimpse of us. It was exhausting, but also exhilarating. I found myself torn between wanting to be with him and wanting to escape the constant attention. That night, as we said goodnight, I felt a mix of emotions. I was happy, but also a bit scared. What did the future hold for us? Could we really have a normal relationship in this crazy world? Elvis looked at me, his eyes serious. "I know it's a lot to handle, but I want you to know how much I care about you. We'll figure it out, okay?" I nodded, feeling a wave of affection. "I know, Elvis, I just hope we can." As I walked back to my car, the night air was cool and the stars were bright. I felt a sense of wonder, but also a hint of uncertainty. This was just the beginning of our journey, and I had no idea where it would lead. But one thing was clear. My life would never be the same again. Elvis and I, we've had some amazing times together. I remember the first time I met him, working at a radio station in Memphis. It was July 1956, and I couldn't believe this superstar was standing right in front of me. We hit it off right away, and before I knew it, he invited me to New York for his first appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show. That was the start of a wild ride. Elvis doesn't date like most guys. He likes to keep things casual and fun. He prefers to be formally introduced to a girl before asking her out. It's not that he's shy, he just respects people. He's always trying to make sure his dates have a good time, even if that means changing plans at the last minute. One minute he might want to go to a fancy restaurant, and the next, he's in the mood for a midnight motorcycle ride. He's never predictable, and that's what makes him so exciting. I remember when he was dating Barbara Hearn in Memphis. They knew each other before he became famous, and their relationship stayed the same even after he became a star. They'd go to movies, have dinner at his place, and watch home movies together. One night, the fans were so thick outside his house that he couldn't leave. He called Barbara and asked if her mom could bring her over. We all ended up having a quiet night at home, playing pool and watching the Indy 500. It was just a simple, fun night, but it meant a lot to Elvis to have a break from the chaos. One of the things that really stood out to me about Elvis was his kindness. When we were in New York for the Ed Sullivan Show, there was this elderly lady in the crowd. She was holding one of his albums, asking for an autograph. The network officials were rushing us, but Elvis stopped. He signed her album and told the official, "If she can take the time to buy my album, I can take the time to sign it." That moment showed me how much he really cared about his fans. Elvis loves nightlife, and Las Vegas was his playground. We spent a week there, and he dated a few girls: Kathy Gabriel, Kitty Dolan, and Sandy Preston. We visited every club and hotel, and Elvis always made sure his dates had the time of their lives. One night, we went to the Sahara Hotel and saw Edgar Bergen. Elvis was fascinated by Bergen's showmanship. Later, we went to the Desert Inn to see Johnny Ray. Elvis and Johnny hit it off, and they both thought the world of each other's talent. Elvis is also a big kid at heart. He loves children and has a soft spot for them. I remember a night in Shreveport, Louisiana, when we were on tour. There were a bunch of kids with polio waiting to see him. He left an hour early to spend time with them, signing autographs and chatting. The show was delayed, but when he finally went on stage, the audience gave him a standing ovation that lasted for 5 minutes. It was one of the most moving moments I've ever seen. Elvis's popularity reached new heights when we went to Honolulu. He was nervous about how he'd be received, but over 3,000 fans were waiting for him at the dock. When we got to our suite, there were piles of fan mail from all over Hawaii. Elvis was overwhelmed. He told me, "All those letters, all those people way over here like me that much. It makes me feel so small." He was so touched by their love that he put everything he had into his performances. Elvis and Rita Moreno had a great time together too. They weren't just two big stars dating. They genuinely enjoyed each other's company. They had fun and laughed a lot. Elvis is more than just a famous singer and actor. He's a kind, generous, and caring person. He's the real deal, and I'm lucky to know him. Elvis and I were making the movie Loving You when Rita came onto the set. Elvis really liked her and asked her out. We decided to double date with Rita and Lori, a girl I was seeing. We went out in Elvis' Cadillac, and Rita looked stunning in her black dress with an orchid in her hair. We had dinner at the Moulin Rouge and watched Dean Martin perform. Elvis and Rita hit it off right away because they both loved Spanish music. After dinner, we went back to Elvis' suite at the Beverly Wilshire. A bunch of friends joined us, and we had a great time listening to music and laughing. Sammy Davis Jr. even showed up and did some impersonations that had everyone in stitches. Around 2 a.m., we all got hungry, so Elvis ordered pizzas for everyone. We ate and talked until 3:30 a.m. when the party started to wind down. I took Lori home, and Elvis dropped Rita off. They went out a few more times after that. When Elvis got his draft notice, he took it pretty well. He had known it was coming, but he was worried about not getting special treatment in the Army. He wanted to be just like any other soldier. Elvis asked for a 3-month deferment to finish filming King Creole, so Paramount wouldn't lose all the money they had invested. The Army granted it, and Elvis went back to work on the movie. During his last few weeks as a civilian, Elvis spent a lot of time with Anita Wood. We would hang out at his house, and then he'd pick up Anita, and we'd all go roller skating late at night. Elvis even bought Anita a 1956 Ford as a going-away present. The night before he had to report, Elvis and Anita went to a movie. Elvis barely slept, and the next morning I drove with him and his parents to the draft board. There were tons of reporters and photographers there. Elvis was cheerful and posed for pictures with his parents and the other draftees. After the roll call, we all went to the examining station. Elvis had to deal with constant interviews and photo ops. His parents and Judy Spreckles were there, and Elvis would come over to talk to them whenever he could. After lunch, Elvis took a nap on a couch, and he looked better rested when he woke up. Finally, it was time for the swearing-in ceremony. Elvis was the second to step forward and repeat the oath. He looked proud and serious. After the ceremony, Elvis asked if Anita could come say goodbye, and she arrived in her new car. They held hands and said their goodbyes. Elvis hugged his parents, and then he got on the bus with the other soldiers. He was chosen to lead the group on the trip to Fort Chaffee. Elvis accepted his new responsibilities and went off to do his duty. Basic training was tough, but Elvis did his best. He became an acting assistant squad leader and did really well in his training. He was a marksman with the carbine and a sharpshooter with the pistol. When it came time for Elvis to ship out to Germany, he was ready to serve his country and hoped his fans would stick with him. He boarded the train to New York, ready for whatever came next. I was supposed to have a press conference an hour after I got to the Brooklyn Army Terminal. I was really tired from the long trip, and still really sad about my mom's death a month ago. But at the press conference, I was all sparkly and joking with the reporters. It was like I had a switch inside me. One moment I was serious, talking about my mom with editor James Gregory, and the next I was cracking jokes. James Gregory, from Movieland and TV Time, said I was one of the nicest, brightest, and most well-mannered young men he'd ever met. He also said I was even handsomer than in my photos. My fans were really proud when they read that, and they should have been. I was doing my best, and I was going to keep doing my best. When my ship sailed away, I knew I was going to Germany, and I was worried. Would my fans forget me? Could I handle the teasing from the other soldiers? But my fans didn't forget me. They kept supporting me, and RCA Victor kept releasing my records. Before I was done with the army, I had sold more than 50 million records. I didn't know that at the time, though. I had to face the loneliness and the teasing without knowing how everything would turn out. Other stars who had been in the army had faced similar problems. Gary Crosby, who understood what I was going through, gave me some advice. He said I should try to blend in by blotting my name tag, pulling my fatigue cap low, and standing in the middle of the second ranks. But it wasn't that easy for me. I just had to be myself and remember that I wanted to be treated like any other soldier. Over time, the other soldiers started to see me as one of them, and the teasing lessened a bit. I was a model soldier. I did my job well, and I got praise from my superiors. I drove a Jeep for the 3rd Armored Division, stationed at Friedberg, Germany. In my free time, I tried to answer as much of my fan mail as I could. I didn't sing publicly, which caused a lot of talk. The Army could have put me in special services, but they didn't. Some people thought my manager, Colonel Parker, said the Army would have to pay me to sing, but that's not how it works. If they wanted me to sing, they could have just assigned me to special services, but they didn't, and I didn't ask for it. Some people thought I could be a powerful Cold War propagandist, because I was so popular with young people behind the Iron Curtain. But the Army just wanted me to do my regular duties. I never complained about being a truck driver. I never tried to change my assignment. I wanted to be a good soldier, and I wanted to keep the promise I made to myself before I joined the Army to never ask for special treatment. The Army recognized my hard work by promoting me to Private First Class and then to Specialist Fourth Class, which is like a corporal. I was doing my best, and I wanted to make the Army and my fans proud. I also wanted to make myself proud. I kept the promise I made to myself, and I did it even when it was hard. In March and April 1959, Movieland and TV Time held a contest to help me stay popular. Fans sent in ideas on how I could stay in the spotlight while I was away. Some suggested I fly back to the US for appearances or tape TV shows. My records were still being released, but would that be enough? As it turned out, my popularity didn't go down. It actually went up. It wasn't the suggestions from my fans or my records that did it. It was me. I was kind, gentle, and respectful, and I was grateful for my fans' love. I always tried to answer letters from fans who were sick or in trouble, even though I couldn't answer everyone. My fans understood and never complained. I became one of the soldiers. I could make my cot and shine my boots as well as anyone. I hung out with my buddies during breaks, just like any other soldier. The only difference was that I lived off the base with my family and bodyguards, but that was allowed for anyone with family there. Being in Germany was still hard. I missed my friends and the life I knew. I told Sam Barbie, a disc jockey, to tell my friends that I missed them and couldn't wait to come home. The crowds and reporters were tough too, especially in a new country, but I never said how hard it was. I just kept doing my best. I lived in a nice home in Bad Nauheim, a quiet street with trees. I didn't have much time to spend there, but when I did, it was relaxing. I dated a few girls, like Vera Tichachawa and Margaret Bugen. My fans didn't mind. They understood that I was lonely and needed company. I told Sam Barbie that the army was treating me well, and I was going to do my best. I sent a cable to Movieland and TV Time to thank my fans for their support. I explained why I couldn't follow all the suggestions; they would draw too much attention to me, and I wanted to be a regular soldier. I was grateful for all the letters I received, proof that I was still the greatest singing idol. Despite everything, I became very popular in Germany. The military police often had to protect me from crowds, and my autographs were even selling on the black market. When I went to Paris for a furlough, I was mobbed. My popularity grew in Europe and all over the world, especially back home in America. But I was still a homesick boy, still grieving for my mom. I had adjusted to army life, and my superiors said I was a fine soldier. I was doing my best, and I was going to keep doing my best until I could come home. Elvis in the army was just like any other young man, but with a twist. He was a truck driver in the army, but he was also a rock and roll superstar. Despite all the fame, he never acted like he was better than anyone else. He was always respectful, and the folks in Bad Nauheim, Germany, where he was stationed, loved him for it. Elvis would often hang out at local bars with his friends, but he always stuck to soda pop. The bar owners never had any trouble with him. They said he behaved just like any other young guy. This simple, down-to-earth behavior made people in Germany and back home admire him even more. Being a good soldier wasn't just about following orders for Elvis. It was about showing the world that a man from a free country could take on his responsibilities and handle whatever came his way. His time in the army was a kind of living advertisement for the U.S., showing that a person could be both famous and a model citizen. While Elvis was in Germany, he didn't forget his fans. He knew they were still there waiting for him. This was clear in the way he wrote to a fan named Daisy, who was paralyzed and spent her days in a hospital. Daisy loved Elvis's music, and it brought her comfort when she was feeling down. When Joy, a friend from the hospital, wrote to Elvis about Daisy, he took the time to write back, even though he was incredibly busy. His letter meant the world to Daisy, and it showed that Elvis truly cared about his fans, even the ones he hadn't met. Elvis's time in the army made him grow as a person. He wasn't just a singer anymore. He was a soldier, a friend, and a role model. His fans back home saw this and loved him even more. They knew that no matter what, Elvis would always be true to himself and to them. Elvis's movies also played a big part in his success. Each film showed a different side of him, from the rebellious teenager in Rebel Without a Cause to the charming musician in King Creole. His movies made him rich, but more importantly, they made him a legend. People loved seeing Elvis on the big screen, and it only added to his mystique. Even when he was away, Elvis's fans never forgot him. They kept listening to his music, reading about him in magazines, and waiting for his return. His time in the army didn't slow him down. It made him stronger. When he came back, he was ready to take on the world again. Elvis's success wasn't just about his talent. It was about his authenticity. He never tried to be someone he wasn't. Whether he was on stage in a movie or just hanging out with friends, Elvis was always true to himself. This is what made him so special, and why he's still the king of rock and roll. Elvis's friends, like Valerie Allen, saw this in him. They knew that he was just a regular guy, with a big heart. Valerie said that Elvis had a way of making people feel at home, like they were part of his family. He was natural and unpretentious, and that's what made him stand out. When he performed, he wasn't just singing a song. He was sharing a piece of himself with his audience. Elvis's time in the army and his interactions with fans like Daisy showed that he was more than just a famous singer. He was a kind, compassionate person who cared deeply about others. This is why, even after all these years, people still love and admire him. Elvis Presley wasn't just a star, he was a true legend. Elvis was more than just a singer to me. He was a friend, a brother, and a hero. I remember the first time I met him, and how he treated me like I was part of his family. That night, I was feeling down because a friend of mine was going through a tough time. Her marriage was on the rocks, and I tried to help, but it only made things worse. I was feeling pretty low, and Elvis noticed. Instead of letting me wallow in my misery, he went out of his way to cheer me up. He told me funny stories, one after another, and even did a whole male quartet imitation, singing all the parts himself. His laughter was contagious, and before I knew it, my frown had turned into a smile. But he didn't stop there. He opened up about his own struggles, about his childhood and the hard times he faced. He talked about how his family's love had gotten him through it all. It was like he could see right through me, and he cared enough to help. Later, we ended up cooking a meal together. I wasn't the best cook, but Elvis didn't mind. He said it was a real fine Southern meal. Even though the bacon was burned and the food was a bit of a mess, it didn't matter to him. What mattered was that we were having fun and enjoying each other's company. Elvis had a way of making everyone feel special. He was like the Pied Piper with kids. They all loved him, and he loved them back. I remember one evening when a group of fans was waiting outside the studio for him. They were so disappointed when they found out he had already left. But instead of getting angry, they showed me their Elvis Presley scrapbooks and talked about him with such enthusiasm. One girl had even made a little doll of Elvis with a guitar, and she was so happy to give it to me to pass along to him. Elvis was impulsive, too. One time, he and his friends decided to go motorcycling, but they didn't have enough bikes, so he just went out and bought 2 more. It wasn't about being rich or showing off. It was about having a good time and sharing that joy with his friends. But there was more to his impulsiveness than just fun. He was quick to sense when someone was feeling down, and would do whatever it took to lift their spirits. Despite his fame, Elvis never forgot where he came from. He was still that country boy at heart. He loved his family and his fans more than anything. He even kept a scrapbook at home, but he only pasted in the nice things people said about him. He was humble, and all the praise in the world couldn't change that. Elvis was also a man of deep faith. He had a picture of Jesus over the ivory organ, in the mansion he bought for his parents. He loved to sing religious songs, and often talked about how faith had helped him through tough times. He wanted to be a preacher when he was younger, and even though his path took him in a different direction, his faith remained a big part of who he was. When he was on stage, Elvis put everything he had into his performances. He would wear extra-large suits and shirts to keep the buttons from tearing, because he moved so much. He loved bright colors and flashy outfits, not just because they looked good, but because they gave him a lift when he was feeling down. Elvis had a heart of gold. He wanted to make everyone happy, and he couldn't understand why some people were against him. He was genuinely shocked when the press accused him of being obscene, or when they said he was only after women for their looks. He just wanted to be a good person and a good friend. Even though he was a king in the music world, Elvis never lost sight of what was truly important. He was always true to himself and to the people he cared about. And that's why, no matter what anyone said, Elvis Presley was still the king. Elvis was more than just a singer to his fans. He was a part of their lives. When his mother passed away, it was like a piece of each fan's heart broke along with his. We saw him grieve, and it was painful. We were there in the funeral home, paying our respects, sending flowers, and writing letters of sympathy. It was a somber time, but it also showed how much Elvis meant to us. When Elvis joined the army and went to Germany, it was hard to say goodbye. We were proud of him, though. He handled it so well, and we knew he would be a great soldier. While he was away, we kept busy supporting him. We sent him presents and millions of letters. We even helped him earn 31 gold records, which now hang at Graceland, the beautiful home he bought for his mother. It was a silent reminder of what a great son he was. Elvis's rise to fame was like a whirlwind. We remember when he first walked into Sun Recording Company to make a record for his mom. He was so nervous. Then, when that record played on the radio, he was so scared he went to a movie theater to hide. But when the calls started pouring in, you could see the excitement in his parents' eyes. It was the beginning of something big. As his career took off, Elvis became a sensation. He made records, appeared on TV, and started making movies. His first big role was in Love Me Tender, but it wasn't until Loving You that we really saw him shine. His face was so expressive and his singing was pure magic. Then came Jailhouse Rock, and that dance, it was incredible. He moved with such grace and rhythm, and it was clear that his music was unique. It wasn't just rock and roll, it was Elvis music. Elvis's acting got better with each movie. By the time he starred in King Creole, he showed everyone he could act. He was more than just a pretty face and a great voice. He was a talented performer. Despite all the fame, Elvis never forgot his roots. He spent time with his family and friends at Graceland. They had picnics, record parties, and even went roller skating. His mom was always so kind to everyone, and she made the best Southern food. When his parents got small roles in Loving You, Elvis was so proud. He was the best son anyone could ask for. Elvis faced a lot of challenges. There were untrue stories in the press, and people who tried to take advantage of him. But he stayed true to himself, never drinking, smoking, or cursing. He even donated blood while in Germany and helped with charity drives. He was a role model, and we were so proud of him. One of the most memorable moments for me was when Elvis performed in Norfolk. He was just starting to become famous, and everyone was excited to see him. After the show, he was so polite and charming. A year later, I saw him perform in Richmond, and it was unforgettable. He was so handsome in his stage costume, and his performance was electrifying. The crowd was so adoring that the security guards had to keep people back. When Elvis left for Germany, the picture of him walking away with his army bag slung over his shoulder was heartbreaking. It was a lonely moment, but he was brave. He was determined to be a good soldier, and he was. His fellow soldiers respected him, and his officers praised him. We were so proud when Elvis won awards and honors. He donated the proceeds from a performance in Tupelo to a youth foundation. Dick Clark dedicated an American Bandstand and showed him on his birthday, and he was so emotional. It was clear how much his fans meant to him. Now, as Elvis is about to return from the Army, we're all excited. He'll star in GI Blues, a movie about soldiers in Germany. It's going to be a mix of comedy and music, and we can't wait to see him back on the big screen. His manager, Colonel Tom Parker, has big plans for him. He believes Elvis will have more adult appeal, and is planning a nationwide tour and TV appearances. Elvis has been through a lot, but we know the best is yet to come. He's a true star, and we'll always be here to support him. We can't wait to welcome him back home with open arms and loving hearts. Elvis is coming home, and it feels like the whole country is excited. I can't wait to see him on TV, especially on the Frank Sinatra's Welcome Home Party for Elvis Presley on ABC. It's happening on May 8th, and I've marked it on my calendar. Ed Sullivan has also said he wants Elvis on his show, which means we'll have plenty of chances to see the king of rock and roll perform. George Christie, the mayor of Teen Town, has even declared March 24th as Elvis Presley Day on his radio show. The whole night will be dedicated to Elvis, with interviews from people who know him best and lots of his best songs. It's going to be a great way to celebrate his return. Everyone is eager to see what Elvis will do next. Colonel Parker, his manager, is already getting tons of offers for movies, TV shows, and concerts. It's clear that being in the Army hasn't slowed Elvis down at all. In fact, it seems like his popularity is stronger than ever. Elvis is looking for a new home near Hollywood, a place where he can relax with his family and friends. He wants a big house with lots of trees, a lawn, and a swimming pool. It sounds like a dream come true, and I can imagine how happy he'll be to finally have a place to call his own after his time in the Army. March 24th, 1960, is going to be a big day. It's the day the king of rock and roll comes back to his fans, and the future looks bright for Elvis. I can't wait to see what he has in store for us next.